Hi, my name is Reed Silverne, and the name of this show is Fed Pride. The reason it's called Fed Pride is because I'm a federal worker and proud of it. Uh, Nothing on this show has been provided to my agency or any other agency of the federal government uh, in order to be reviewed by a public affairs officer or anybody else. Uh, One of the reasons that that hasn't been done is because they don't know what I'm about to say because I haven't given them anything, and in fact, I don't know what I'm about to say. There's a number of different issues that are out today. I'm going to talk about what's in the Federal Employees News Digest, and I have some wonderful articles out of a magazine called the Federal Times, which is a weekly that I think I'm going to get from now on, and I'm surprised that I haven't been reviewing that in the past. But they had a wonderful article on Oklahoma City 1 year later where they interviewed a number of the federal workers who survived the blast and who had relatives in the blast. And it was a wonderful article. And I'm not going to go through that article. You can get that article out of the April 22nd issue of Federal Times and read it yourself. But they had some other articles that were very, very interesting and very, very apropos on issues connected to the security of federal workers. Before I get into that, there's a number of different issues that are on. The FY 1997 bill is crawling through the congressional system, and in that bill are some of the familiar old bugaboos that have been bothering federal workers since the previous year. Among them is a 0.5% increase in the employee contribution for retirement over 3 years, and which is basically a 0.5% pay cut because you get a certain benefit for the amount that you put in now. If you put in more and you get the same benefit, then basically they're just transferring a 0.5% of your pay to the retirement system instead of spending the money themselves. That's just one of them. Then, of course, there's putting off the COLAs for 3 months. That pretty much is in the bag. And increasing the CSRS agency contribution. That's going to be a big issue because if they raise the agency contribution from the equivalent of what we pay up to, I believe, it was 11%, but I don't have that figure right in front of me. There's going to be less money that the agency has available for payroll to actually do their job, for transfers or whatever the purpose of that particular agency is. And of course, they're very, very likely to take that out of payrolls, and in order to do that, they have to lay off or fail to hire or reduce personnel one way or the other. So that's a concern. And basically last year some of these ideas had been put into the 1996 Republican bills, but the Clinton administration had opposed most of these ideas, and ideas that were admittedly even more radical than these. So these are not all that terribly radical. One of those that had been completely rejected was to freeze the government contribution to FEHB. Should have increased the employee contribution every single year. Now that hasn't gotten anywhere, and that's not going into the present year budget. But these other three things, the 0.5% increase in the employee contribution to the retirement, the putting off of the COLAs for a number of years, and the increase in the agency contribution, those have been agreed to during the course of the give and take during the budget crisis by the Clinton administration. So it really looks like those are going to be included in whatever comes out of the 1997 budget conflict, whatever that happens to be. And of course, as everybody knows, a couple of weeks ago, the 96 appropriations budgets for the remaining federal departments have been finally passed by Congress and signed by the President, and we're all pleased that that bugaboo has been laid to rest once and for all. Another one of the things that's coming up is the offer of a whole new retirement system, which started out as a rumor and then became an actual policy by the head of the Civil Service Committee, House Civil Service Subcommittee, whose name is John Mica, Republican of Florida. And what that does, as I've mentioned in previous shows, it Right now, the FERS system has the employee contribution, which is a regular retirement, about 1% per year, a little less in the early years. Then there's the Social Security part, in which case the employee pays Social Security taxes. And then the third part is a TSP, and the TSP is a thrift savings program in which the employee can put up to 10%, and the government puts up 5% matching. Actually, the 5% comes into effect with the employee only putting up 5%, but the employee can put an extra could put up to 10% of his own salary. And of course that can build and build and build and become quite a nest egg over a period of 30 years, 35 years until a person retires. I promote this, and I think that any federal employee that has access to this plan, even the CSRS people, can put up to 5% of their own salary in without a match, should do so, because you're going to save a lot of money. It's completely tax deferred, one of the few totally tax deferred plans out there for any group of people, and it's like a 401k plan. It really, really works. The TSP account, by the way, the amount that's actually in the various funds and in the stock funds have grown up to $37 billion. So it's quite a lot of money under the control of this FERS plan. Well, this guy is suggesting an even different plan, and that plan would go into effect for anybody hired after October 1st, 1997. And what he would do is he would completely get rid of the 5% matching for the TSP account, so the government wouldn't have to match anything into the person's own account. And instead, they would set up another retirement account, and that retirement account would also replace the actual retirement. And in my understanding of how this thing works, and in that case, of course, the government saves the retirement, and the 5% is no longer going into the TSP account, but it becomes kind of like a 401k, completely contributed by your employer, and apparently it's portable, but who knows whether that's really true or not. And up to $100 million would go into that the first year, even if it just applies to new hirees. Of course, this would balloon and balloon and balloon, and there are a lot of questions about who would manage this fund and how this fund would work. And a lot of people have some serious questions about this plan and whether this plan makes any sense at all. It certainly is not as generous as the FERS plan, because the FERS plan, you have a defined benefit plan. In this plan, you have only a defined contribution. And the other thing is, the government's already paying you the 5% into your own account, plus providing the FERS employee the retirement. So it's basically, we take and take, and we don't really give much back. And of course, that's good for the taxpayer, and I have to give the Republicans credit for trying to save money, but what good is saving money if you're just going to hurt this one segment of the population? And there's another point that's been brought up that's very, very interesting, and that is how is this going to affect years and years down the line, when almost all the employees are in such a plan? How is this going to affect the actual national debt out there, and how the national debt is competing with private funds? And as I've said in a number of different venues and a number of different weeks, everybody knows that the national debt has gone up to $5 trillion, and everybody's very, very concerned about it. What very few people know is that only about $3.6 trillion of that $5 trillion actually is owned by anybody else but the federal government itself. All the remainder is owned by the Social Security Fund, the Medicare Fund, the Part B Fund, all these different funds, not to mention the CSRS fund and the TSP G account. And all those accounts, which kind of came into prominence during the shutdown because Congress refused to raise the debt ceiling, are part of the national debt. But in fact, even though the taxpayer is paying taxes into these funds, it's just like borrowing money from your TSP account and paying interest into your own fund. Yeah, you pay interest, but you pay your own money to another account that has your own money in it. And that's basically what the government is doing. And about little under 30%, 28, 29%, and it's going up every year, not down, of the entire national debt is going to government funds themselves. Now, if you take this money out of government funds and you don't have the retirement going into the government funds, what does that do? That means that that portion of the buyer of government bonds and government securities, which is the government itself, the various funds, won't be buying the national debt. Now, is that going to mean the government's going to go into the private economy and borrow the money or try to sell more bonds to the public? And in order to do that, is that going to increase the interest rates that the government's going to have to pay and force up interest rates for everybody else? Because there is kind of a seesaw effect where the government bonds really impacts interest rates throughout the economy, and they certainly do. So that's another angle toward this new retirement system. Won't have much effect in the first 10 years, in the first 5, 10 years, but in 25 years or 30 years, when the entire workforce is on such a program, and that program is all invested in private stocks and bonds and so on and so forth, what's going to be the impact? Already the TSP account, there's $37 billion out there which are in stocks and bonds, the F accounts and the C accounts for the TSP funds, and that's a lot of money. Another little note that has come through, the entire CSRS, Civil Service Retirement Benefits, and I assume this includes FERS, although there aren't that many people retired in FERS yet, will be a lot more in the future, is about $43 billion. And of that $43 billion in fiscal year 1997, only $10 billion actually comes out of the employee accounts and I guess the Postal Service contribution, which is a special fund because the Postal Service is kind of considered to be a semi-private corporation. And so the other $33 billion coming out of the agency contributions, which match the amount that the employee is putting in, but that is the government's planning to increase that, and out of the general fund, which of course is the taxpayer, coming out of the taxpayer's hide. That's supposed to grow to $60 billion by 2010, which is a pretty slow growth compared to a lot of other entitlements. But they say it'll grow to $150 billion by 2030. Now, I'm not sure where they got that figure because most of those retirees in those out years, way out years, are going to be people who retire out of FERS. And as we all know, FERS has a much lower actual retirement that's funded. But this may be a scare tactic to try to get people into this new retirement system that Congressman Mike is talking about. I don't really know where that comes from. Another issue that's come up is the voluntary RIFs. And as you know, when there's a RIF is a reduction in force. That means that people are going to be out that door. And there's a lot of people who just like to leave the government. They'd like to retire. They'd like to go. They're in certain career fields that are not considered excess, so that they won't allow them to take early outs or buyouts or anything like that. They've just approved a program to allow voluntary RIFs. And they don't know how many agencies are going to take that or what they're going to grant, but it is legal now. And basically what the voluntary RIF is that if you volunteer to leave, let's say you have a real estate broker job waiting for you and you've passed the real estate broker test, you're ready to roll, you can take a voluntary RIF. If you just quit and signed an SF-50, you'd be out there with nothing. But if you take a voluntary RIF, you can get your severance pay. And as a lot of people know, the severance pay formula, especially if you're a little older and you have a lot of years in, is very, very generous. I mean, I believe it's 1 week per year up to the first 10, and or maybe it's 1 week for 2 years up to the first 10. Then it goes to 1 week per year thereafter. Those are 10 pay periods. I think it's per pay period, or 1 pay period per year. Forgive me. After the first 10 years. And then there's a multiplier for how many years you are older than 40. So if you're 50, you can double the number of weeks and pay periods you have coming to you. And you can get up to 52 weeks. You can get up to a full year's severance if you have the right number of years and you have the right formula. So that can be a very generous incentive for some people with a lot of years in, might be close to retirement, and who are willing to leave and save a job for somebody else. And I think that's a very good program, and I don't have a problem with that. And I hope that a lot of DOD agencies, because apparently only the DOD has been given this authority, will take them up on it and allow people to do that. Now, there's another very subtle thing that I haven't heard about before, but apparently in the 1993 law, they had adjusted the formula for the amount of contribution the government is going to pay toward health benefits after 1999 and thereafter. And apparently that government contribution goes from 72% down to only 67%. And apparently that's going to cost the average federal worker an extra $250 a year. Now that's off a few years, but for those who have a career in the federal service, that might hurt. Now, out of that Federal Times magazine, there were a number of very, very good articles about the threats that have been put up against federal workers. And something that I didn't realize is that on an average week, before the Oklahoma City bombing, before all the militia groups at least became famous, there were up to 20 to 30 bomb threats against federal facilities throughout the country. That, of course, tripled in the weeks after the Oklahoma City bombing. There were all kinds of hoaxes, all kinds of scare tactics, teenagers having a little fun day, and all the other sickos out there who want to threaten a federal facility. So naturally, in a normal period, if there's 20 to 30 threats, and during this period there were more like 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 threats a week, they don't empty out every building every time there's a threat, and that's a fact. But they do have some pointers in here of what to do if you do get a bomb threat, and a few things that you ought to keep in mind. One is to try to keep the caller on the line as long as you can. Ask him, where's the bomb? What kind of bomb? Tell him that there's children in the building, especially if there are children in the building, but even if there are not. And he may just say, oh my God, you know, the bomb is over here, and I'll tell you what the situation is, and try to talk him out of it, of course. If possible, signal a coworker to call the police for you. So if you can keep on the phone for a while, you might get a little bit more information. So that's a very good thing to do. Listen for background noises. That's very, very important. If you hear traffic in the background, you may know that he's at a payphone. If you hear disco music in the background, he might be at a disco or he might be in a bar. If you hear country music, you know, that might help the authorities pin down what kind of bar, what kind of place this guy is calling from, or what kind of personality this person has. And the most important thing is take notes. The more you can remember, the better it is, the more information they'll get to try to get that threatener who may actually be a bomber. And the other thing is listen for accents and see if you can hear an accent. There's a ethnic accent or a southern accent or a whatever accent that there might be. But that may help the authorities to find this guy. And apparently these bomb threats are much more common even before all this happened than people think. But there have been some very serious plots against federal buildings. As you know, and I've talked about it on this show, two guys were arrested for planting a fertilizer bomb at an IRS center up in Reno, Nevada. They have some information that the bomb was in a 35-gallon drum filled with fertilizer and diesel fuel. But what happened was he set the fuse, but the fuse had gone out by itself. And otherwise, there would have been some dead federal workers. And that would have been a very, very serious incident. But they did catch two guys, and of course they say it has nothing to do with the Oklahoma City bombing. There is no major group out there that's conspiring against your health and life. Now, they also arrested another tax protester in Texas who threatened to blow up the IRS center in Austin, Texas. And he apparently was a pretty serious guy, since he's up for life imprisonment. And he tried to put together a plot to put together a 1,200-pound fertilizer bomb to blow up this building, and told an undercover agent who he was trying to get to come in with the plot with him, that he was going to blow up federal buildings throughout the country. They don't know if other people are involved. They don't know whether he's a single guy or a member of a larger group, but apparently he was pretty serious, and he was after. He had pictures from every single angle of this building. He knew how many workers were in it. He was trying to target specifically an IRS office within the building and trying to locate, set up the bomb so that it would actually hit that particular office and wouldn't miss it. And it was a very, very serious incident, and he's up for basically possibility of life imprisonment. So that's a pretty serious situation. And then, of course, there's the bombers out in Georgia that they picked up. They picked up 2 members of the Georgia militia, and these 2 guys had enough bombs to put together 40 pipe bombs. They don't know what they were after. They don't know if they were trying to disrupt the Olympics. They don't know if they were after churches. There's been a lot of church bombings in the South and other southern states besides that. But it was a serious conspiracy, and they caught them before they were about to distribute those bombs. And according to the informant, they were going to distribute those bombs to other members of their group the following day. So that was a pretty serious situation. Now, over the next 2 years, the GSA is going to spend $174 million to try to improve the security in your building and in buildings throughout the country. They've already spent $32.4 million. Among the things that they're trying to do is have controlled entrances and exits, make the employees actually flash their badge to get in and out of a federal building, have x-rays and metal detectors at some entrances in some buildings. Closed-circuit televisions have been installed to try to get pictures of the people coming in and out of the building. They've hired 800 new contract guards, although there have been a lot of talk that they should be hiring more Federal Protective Service people with actual experience and training. They have at least hired these contract guards. And underground parking has been strictly limited to employees only, so that people can't just go driving under the building and try to park next to the pillars that hold the building up. And on another note, the headquarters of the Transportation Department in Washington, D.C. has been declared a sick building by government property inspectors. And apparently this particular building, and this is true with a lot of buildings throughout the country, has a fungus called Stachybotrys chartarum. And this terrible fungus has conspired to sicken many, many federal employees. The building was declared sick in early April after employees said the air made them ill, and apparently it did. Hopefully their jobs didn't make them ill, but the air in the building definitely did. And that's just another incident of various things that can affect the quality of life in the federal government and the quality of work experience that federal people have. So there's a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of worries. A lot of people are not sure how things are going to go. Another interesting little edge to the Oklahoma City situation is that 300 people have gotten together and are suing the maker of the company called ICI Explosives USA, who made some of the parts, for failing to reduce the explosive potential of their product. And they blame, at least partially, the ease and ability of the bombers to get a hold of these components, and also the failure of the companies and companies like that to try to control their product. My name is Reed Silverne. The name of the show is Fed Pride. The reason it's called Fed Pride is because I'm a federal worker and I'm proud of it. I'll see you next week. Thank you very much.